Do you have a stubborn teenager that just drives you crazy? Well, today we're going to talk about some ideas that will help you deal with your stubborn teenager. Stubborn teenager. I guess you could say just teenager, because at times all teenagers can be stubborn. The truth is, at times we can all be stubborn. And so we're going to talk today, though, about some ideas that can help you in your relationship with your teenager to have more influence over them, to help them make better choices in their life. Now, we have another video on our channel that is talking about what to do or how to help your son or daughter that may be out of control. Well, this is a step before out of control. And so this is the time to intervene and to work on that relationship so that the behavior and the pattern never gets to that place where your son or daughter's behavior is out of control. So let's lay a foundation first of all about this, and just want to remind you of what this YouTube channel is all about. It's principle-based living. And what that means is that we live in a world that is governed by principles or by laws. And those laws are consistent and they operate all of the time, whether we know about them, whether we agree with them, or whether we understand them. So an example is gravity. Doesn't matter whether I know about gravity or not. If I step off a cliff, I'm not going to float, I'm going to fall. And so there are laws or principles that govern other aspects of this world too. There are principles that govern things like relationships and happiness and success. If we don't know what those principles are, and if we don't understand them, then it seems like we live in a world that is governed by chance. But Albert Einstein said, God does not play dice with the universe. So he knew that there were laws that govern this world in which we live. And again, if we understand those laws and then we follow those laws in our behavior and in our relationships, we're more likely to get the outcomes that we want in life. There are three foundational principles, which are accountability, choice, and control. And we have other videos that go into more detail about those principles, but just for a brief overview, accountability just says that each one of us are accountable for our life. And we can't give that accountability away to anyone else, and no one can take it from us, which really just means we're responsible for our outcomes. So the choices that we make, the way that we respond to things that happen, the way that we think, and the things that we do determine what our life is like. And we are the only ones that have the ability to change that. So that's accountability. The second principle is the principle of choice, that in any circumstance or situation, we all get to choose what we do in that situation. And then there are only three things that we have control over. And that's the third foundational principle, which is control. Most of us want control over our lives. And in order to get that control, what we tend to do is to try to control everything around us. And in doing that, what we are actually doing is giving away our control, because the only thing that we have control over are our conscious thoughts, our emotions, and that's because our thoughts create our emotions and our behavior. Everything else is just influence. So those are the foundational principles. The other thing that's really important to understand is that everything that we do in this life, we do for a reason, or we wouldn't do it. But most of the time, in fact, 90% of the time, as we go about our day and we go about our life, we're on autopilot, which means it's the subconscious part of our brain that's driving our behavior. In some regards, it's kind of like we're a robot that has been programmed to behave in certain ways. And that programming, though, that occurred in our life happened mostly at that subconscious level. So what happens is, in life we experience things and we either like what we experience or we don't like what we experience. We respond based on those experiences and our thoughts about the experience. If we have something that we like and we think it's a positive thing, then we're probably going to repeat that. If we experience something that we don't like, where it doesn't give us the outcome that we want, we'll probably not repeat it. Now, we may repeat it a second time or a third time, but if we get that same outcome, the outcome that we don't like, eventually we're going to try something different until we find something that gives us an outcome that is better than this. And then we'll continue to do that until we find something better or until it doesn't work any longer. But again, most of those decisions are made at a subconscious level. So we're not consciously aware of it. And then as we develop patterns of behavior in our life or habits, and then as we go about experiencing life, we never really question or think about that we're actually creating our own life experience. We just think that this is the way life is. An example would be, I'm unhappy because I don't have the things that I want, or I am unhappy because I'm not allowed to do the things that I want to do. And so I've been conditioned to believe that having things or having what I want makes me happy, which isn't true. It's my thoughts about having those things that makes me happy. So really it's a choice. Or I have this belief that if I'm not able to do whatever I want to do, then I'm unhappy. But what's really happened is that maybe by being unhappy or being angry or behaving in a way that I do when I'm unhappy, it actually influences my parents or whoever to give in and give me what I want. And so by being unhappy, it actually creates a situation where I get what I want. But again, the belief then is that my happiness comes from things that are outside of my control. So think about that. Most of us want to be in control of our life, and we spend a majority of the time in our life trying to gain control because we think that control is going to keep us safe and it's going to make us happy. But the truth is, anytime we're controlling any of those things outside of ourselves, we're really not in control. And no wonder so many of us are going through life unhappy, feeling out of control, because we're trying to control the things that we can't. So what does this have to do with a stubborn child? So everything we do for a reason. So there's a reason that your child is stubborn. It's probably not that they were born that way, but what probably has happened is that over time they have learned that by being stubborn, so resisting things gives them the outcome that they want. So they feel uncomfortable, they don't like things the way that they are, and they have learned that by resisting, then I end up getting what I want and I feel better. So that's important to understand, because as a parent, if I understand that, then I begin to see my child differently. They're not just a stubborn child that is trying to make life difficult for me. What I've got is a child who wants to be happy, who is feeling uncomfortable with where they're at, and what they've learned is that by being stubborn, it gives them what they want. So the best way to help a stubborn child is not to get into a power struggle with them, because when we get into a power struggle and we try to force or to control somebody else, again, that's a violation of principle. We can't control anybody else. We can't make them do anything. But oftentimes when we try to force that, what we do is invite more of what we don't want. So oftentimes as a parent, I may actually be doing things that reinforce my child's stubborn behavior and actually create more of the problem instead of helping the problem. So again, I want to look back and try to see if I can figure out what is the goal of my child's behavior. So why are they being stubborn? One way that can help you with that is by paying attention to how you feel when your child is being stubborn. And I'll give you two basic things. If you just feel annoyed with their behavior, with their stubbornness, then what that tells you is what your child is really after is attention. And so what you want to do in that situation is you don't want to give them attention on demand. So you don't want to give them attention for their stubbornness. If you can, what you want to do is find a way that you can disengage and not participate in that power struggle. So you're not giving them the attention. Even if it's negative attention, it's still attention. So I want to withdraw and avoid giving them attention. But in the back of my head, I now know my child wants more attention. So I'm going to look for opportunities where I can give them positive attention for making positive or healthy choices. So I'm going to look for the first opportunity where I can pay attention to them when they're doing something that's in their self-interest or a positive behavior. I can also look for opportunities to spend more time with my son or daughter and to give them the attention that they're wanting in their life. The other thing that you can look at as far as how you feel is when they're being stubborn, if you're feeling angry, then what that can tell you is the goal of their stubbornness or their misbehavior is that they're feeling out of control. And so what that tells you is they want or need more control in their life. Now, as a parent, you may say, and rightly so, that, you're the parent, it's your house, you have control over those things or the right to make the decisions and choices for those things, and you have a right and a responsibility to help keep your child safe. But if I understand that my child feels out of control and they want more control, then you can look for ways in order to give them control. And one of the best ways to give them control is by giving them choices. And you can give choices in such a way that ultimately you still have control. So you set the parameter, but within that parameter, they're free to choose this or this or this. For a young child, you could say something to them instead of saying, it's bedtime, you need to go to bed. If you're running into power struggles with them, then you may say to them, do you want to clean up now and get ready for bed, or would you rather wait and do it in 15 minutes? So you're giving them a choice over which they want to do. You're not telling them what to do, but they will feel like, and in fact they do have more control over their life. And as they begin to experience more of that control, you will see less of that stubbornness or resistance of trying to prove that they have control over their life. The other thing that's really important in any relationship with our children is to focus on building the relationship. So doing things to create more influence with your child. So getting to a place where they trust you, you trust them, they respect you, you respect them, and that you're able and you get really good at setting boundaries. And boundaries are what you control, not trying to control them, but again, setting those boundaries. And then spending time doing positive and fun things and learning opportunities together with them. Because as that relationship improves, your children are going to be more likely to listen to you, to respect you, and to see you as somebody that loves them and has their best interest at heart, not somebody that's just trying to control them, to make them unhappy. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the information in today's video, and if you found it helpful to you, or if you have additional questions or challenges that you're facing with your son or daughter. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel, ring the bell so that you can get daily updates. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, make sure you follow me here.